The most powerful force shaping your life right now is not the economy, not other people's decisions, not the particular circumstances you were born into, and not the events happening around you in the world. The most powerful force shaping your life is something far more intimate and far more continuously active than any of those. It is your own consciousness, the specific quality of awareness you bring to each moment, the beliefs running beneath the surface of deliberate thought, the emotional frequencies that color your perception before you have made a single conscious choice. These are the primary architects of the reality you inhabit. This has been understood in varying vocabularies and from varying angles by virtually every philosophical and spiritual tradition that has engaged seriously with the question of why human beings experience the specific lives they do. This audiobook brings that understanding to you in its most complete and most immediately applicable form. Every chapter ahead addresses a different dimension of this foundational truth. You will learn how the subconscious mind was programmed before you had the tools to evaluate what was being installed. You will understand how consciousness shapes perception before perception shapes experience. You will discover the specific practices of Hermetic philosophy, subconscious reprogramming, visualization, and intentional living that genuine inner transformation requires. The knowledge here has helped generations transform, not by changing their circumstances first, but by changing the consciousness from which their circumstances emerge. If you are enjoying this audiobook and want to continue building real communication confidence, subscribe to this channel now. More chapters are coming, and each one will guide you step by step through mastering every conversation. Chapter 1. The Universe Within. Consciousness as the ground of reality. There is a question that serious thinkers across every culture and every era have eventually arrived at, not because they were told to ask it, but because the nature of genuine inquiry eventually makes it unavoidable. What is the relationship between the mind that is observing the world and the world that is being observed? In ordinary daily life, this question feels abstract and distant from the practical concerns of work, relationships, finances, and health. But the question is not abstract at all. Its answer determines whether a person lives as someone acted upon by circumstances, or as someone whose relationship to circumstances is considerably more creative, more dynamic, and more determinative than most people have been taught to expect. The answer that emerges from the most careful examination of both ancient wisdom and contemporary scientific investigation is not what most people's cultural education has prepared them for. The ancient Hermetic tradition, preserved in the collection of texts known as the Corpus Hermeticum, attributed to the legendary teacher Hermes Trismegistus, articulates what it calls the principle of mentalism as the foundational principle of all 7 Hermetic principles. The principle of mentalism states that the universe is mental, that all of reality is in some fundamental sense the expression of mind or consciousness. This is not a claim that the physical world is an illusion, or that matter does not exist. It is the specific claim that the distinction between mind and matter is not as absolute or as one-directional as the dominant materialist view of the modern era has assumed. The Hermetic tradition understood consciousness not as a byproduct of physical processes, but as the primary creative medium through which physical experience is continuously generated and sustained. Quantum physics the most precise and most extensively tested physical theory in the history of science, has generated findings that the founders of quantum theory found deeply unsettling precisely because they pointed in the direction of the Hermetic principle of mentalism rather than away from it. The specific finding most relevant here is the measurement problem. The consistent experimental demonstration that the behavior of quantum systems is influenced by the act of observation in ways that standard physics operating with a sharp observer. Independent reality cannot adequately explain. Niels Bohr, Werner Heisenberg, Eugene Wigner, and John von Neumann all wrestled with this finding, and all arrived at formulations that implicated consciousness in the determination of physical reality at the most fundamental measured level. The specific implications of this for ordinary human life remain contested among physicists. The direction it points is not. The specific claim this audiobook makes, and will support across all of its chapters, is more modest than the full Hermetic position and more specific than a vague assertion that mind matters. The claim is this: the quality of your consciousness, your dominant beliefs, your habitual expectations, your characteristic emotional frequencies, and the specific self-concept you operate from shapes your experienced reality through specific, identifiable, practically workable mechanisms that have consequences for every domain of your life. These mechanisms include selective attention, subconscious programming, interpersonal broadcast, physiological state, and behavioral generation. All of these operate continuously. All of them are shaped by the quality of your inner life. And all of them can be deliberately worked with once they are genuinely understood. The reason this understanding is described as the most powerful knowledge available is not hyperbole. It is the specific recognition that every other form of knowledge about financial strategy, about relational skills, about professional development, about health practices, operates through a human consciousness that either amplifies or limits the effectiveness of that knowledge depending on its quality. The same financial strategy, applied by two different people with different consciousness qualities, produces different results. The same relational skills, deployed from two different inner states, produce different responses. Every external strategy operates downstream of the consciousness applying it, which means developing the consciousness itself is the highest leverage intervention available in any life. The practical significance of understanding consciousness as the ground of reality, rather than as a passive product of it, is the specific shift it produces in the fundamental orientation toward change and toward life. The person who has genuinely absorbed this understanding stops asking primarily, what do I need to do to change my circumstances, and starts asking, what quality of consciousness am I currently bringing to my circumstances, and what does that need to become in order to generate the circumstances I genuinely want. This shift from outer to inner as the primary address of change is not a retreat from practical engagement with the world. It is the specific discovery of the highest leverage point available for genuine, lasting change in any external domain. The chapters ahead will take each dimension of this understanding and develop it in depth. The chapter on the subconscious will describe precisely how the most fundamental layer of consciousness was programmed and how it can be genuinely revised. The chapters on Hermetic principles will take each of the 7 principles and apply them to the specific practical concerns of daily life. The chapters on visualization, affirmation, and intentional living will describe the specific practices through which the understanding is converted from knowledge into genuine inner transformation. And the final chapters will address what the fully developed practice of conscious reality creation looks like in a complete, integrated, daily lived form. The journey from this opening chapter to those final ones is the journey this audiobook is designed to guide. Beginning with the foundational question of the nature of consciousness and reality is not a detour through abstract philosophy before getting to the practical content. The foundational understanding is itself the most practical content available, because everything else in this audiobook rests on it. The person who understands clearly why consciousness shapes reality engages with every specific practice described in subsequent chapters with a quality of genuine conviction and genuine motivation that the person who has been given only the practices without the foundational understanding cannot bring to them. The conviction is not blind faith. It is the specific, grounded, evidence-supported confidence that the principles are real, the mechanism is genuine, and the work of developing consciousness is the most worthwhile work available in any human life. Chapter 2. The 7 Hermetic Principles and How They Govern Your Life. The Hermetic tradition articulated its understanding of how reality works through 7 specific principles that together constitute what it called the Kybalion, a comprehensive description of the laws governing all levels of existence from the most physical to the most spiritual. These principles were not presented as doctrines requiring faith, but as descriptions of observable laws, in the same sense that the law of gravity is a description of an observable physical regularity rather than a theological claim requiring belief. The 7 principles are mentalism, correspondence, vibration, polarity, rhythm, cause and effect, and gender. Each of these is active in your life right now, shaping your experience with the same consistency and the same indifference to whether you are aware of them as the physical laws governing the movement of planets. Understanding them is not a matter of adopting a particular spiritual worldview. It is a matter of understanding the specific operating principles of the reality you already inhabit. The principle of mentalism, described in the previous chapter as the foundational principle, establishes the mind's creative role in reality. The principle of correspondence, encapsulated in the phrase "as above, so below, as within, so without," describes the specific relationship between different levels of reality and between the inner world and the outer one. The outer world corresponds to the inner world, not as a perfect mirror image, but as a consistent reflection of the dominant qualities of the inner state, in the specific way that a television signal corresponds to the specific frequency on which the transmitter is broadcasting. The inner world is the transmitter. The outer experience is the reception. And the quality of what is received consistently reflects the quality of what is being transmitted, regardless of whether the transmitter is aware that transmission is occurring. The principle of vibration describes the fundamental restlessness of all reality, the specific understanding that everything, from the densest matter to the most subtle thought, is in continuous motion at specific rates and qualities. In the human context, different emotional states, different qualities of thought, and different levels of consciousness correspond to different vibrational frequencies, in the same way that different radio stations correspond to different broadcast frequencies. The person who primarily inhabits states of genuine fear, genuine resentment, and genuine contraction is broadcasting at a specific frequency that corresponds to specific qualities of experience. The person who primarily inhabits states of genuine love, genuine openness, and genuine creative engagement is broadcasting at a different frequency that corresponds to genuinely different qualities of experience. The principle of vibration is not mystical. It describes the specific mechanism through which inner state and outer experience correspond. The principle of polarity describes the specific structure of reality in which everything has its opposite, and the two poles of any continuum are actually the same thing differing only in degree. Hot and cold are the same thing at different degrees. Love and its apparent opposite are the same thing at different degrees. This principle has a specific practical implication. A state can be transmuted toward its opposite by moving along the same continuum, rather than by abandoning one thing for an entirely different thing. The person who is chronically fearful is not required to jump immediately to fearlessness. They are required to move along the continuum from fear toward the courage end of the same spectrum, which is accessible through the specific practices described in later chapters. The principle of polarity means genuine transformation does not require the impossible leap from one extreme to its opposite, but the patient traversal of the continuum connecting them. The principle of rhythm describes the specific pendulum-like quality of all natural processes, including psychological and experiential ones. Every advance is followed by a retreat. Every period of expansion is followed by a period of contraction. Every peak is followed by a trough. This principle explains something that confuses and discourages many people engaged in genuine inner development work. The experience of having made genuine progress and then finding themselves in a period of retreat that seems to undo what was gained. The Hermetic teaching is that this is not undoing, but rhythm, the natural oscillation of all processes, and that the skilled practitioner learns to recognize the trough as part of the natural rhythm, rather than as evidence of failure. Maintaining the inner work during the retreat phase with the specific understanding that the advance phase will reliably follow. The principle of cause and effect, which Shin described in related vocabulary as the boomerang of life, establishes the specific understanding that nothing happens by accident or by fortune in the ultimate sense. Every effect has its cause, and every cause has its effect, and the specific causes most directly governing the quality of human experience are the inner causes of thought, belief, expectation, and emotional state, rather than the outer causes of circumstance and event. This does not deny the genuine causal role of external events and systemic forces in human life. It establishes the specific principle that the inner life is also a genuine causal force, operating through the mechanisms of subconscious programming, perceptual selection, and behavioral generation to produce corresponding outer effects with a reliability that becomes unmistakable to anyone who genuinely examines the patterns of their own life with honest attention. The principle of gender describes the specific quality of creative process in which a masculine principle of active direction combines with a feminine principle of receptive generation to produce genuine creation. In the human psychological context, the masculine principle corresponds to deliberate intention, focused directed thought, and specific chosen direction. The feminine principle corresponds to genuine receptivity, the specific quality of openness and allowance through which the inner world receives and generates new forms from the seeds of intention planted by the directed thought. The person who applies only directed intention without genuine receptivity is forcing rather than creating. The person who maintains only receptive openness without directed intention is passive rather than genuinely generative. Genuine creative power requires the specific balance of directed intention and genuine receptive allowance that the principle of gender describes. The 7 Hermetic principles together constitute a complete map of the operating system of consciousness and reality, and the practical work of this audiobook is the work of learning to read this map accurately enough to navigate deliberately rather than by accident. Each principle will appear in different forms across the subsequent chapters as the specific practices of inner development described later draw on all 7 simultaneously. The person who understands these principles clearly enough to recognize them in operation across their own daily experience has access to a quality of understanding about why their life is working the way it is working, and what specific inner changes would produce what specific outer changes that constitutes the most practically valuable form of self-knowledge available. Chapter 3. The Subconscious Architecture of Your World. The building you live in was built by someone else according to specifications you did not choose during a period when you were too young to evaluate what was being designed. This is a metaphor for the subconscious mind and its relationship to the experienced life of any adult who has never examined what was installed during the developmental period and why. The subconscious mind is not a passive storage facility for memories. It is the primary operating system of the human being, processing the vast majority of sensory, cognitive, emotional, and behavioral activity below the threshold of conscious awareness, and doing so according to programs that were written primarily between birth and approximately age 7. The adult inhabiting the life that these programs have been generating is, in most cases, largely unaware that the programs exist as programs rather than as simply the way things are. The specific reason the developmental period produces such deep and durable subconscious programming is the specific brainwave state in which the young brain primarily operates. Research on electroencephalographic patterns in developing children consistently shows that from birth through approximately age 2, the brain operates predominantly in delta waves, the slowest brainwave state associated with deep, dreamless sleep in adults. From approximately age 2 through age 6, the dominant brainwave state shifts to theta, the state associated with deep hypnosis, and the dream state in adults. From approximately age 6 through early adolescence, the brain operates predominantly in alpha, the relaxed but aware state associated with light meditation. Only in adolescence does the brain begin to operate primarily in the faster beta waves of ordinary adult waking consciousness. The significance of this developmental sequence is precise. The critical faculty of the analytical, evaluating conscious mind that operates in the faster beta state is not available to the young child absorbing the foundational programs of its subconscious architecture. What goes into the subconscious during this deep receptivity period goes in directly, without the analytical evaluation that would allow the conscious mind to reject inaccurate or unhelpful content. the specific emotional atmosphere of the early environment, the repeated verbal messages of authority figures, the implicit standards of the household about what level of safety, love, abundance, and belonging is normal, the modeled beliefs of the primary caregivers about what life is and what it offers. All of this writes itself onto the subconscious as its foundational operating programs, with a depth and a durability that the subsequent years of conscious experience rarely match. The adult who finds that certain patterns in their life seem immune to their most determined conscious efforts to change them is usually encountering the specific programs written during this developmental period, operating below the reach of the conscious efforts directed at them. The subconscious operates through 3 primary channels in adult life, and understanding each channel is essential for understanding both why unwanted patterns persist and how genuine change at the subconscious level produces genuine change in outer experience. The first channel is perceptual. The subconscious shapes what reaches conscious awareness through the filtering function of the reticular activating system, making the experienced world correspond to the subconscious programs by consistently delivering evidence that confirms them while filtering out evidence that contradicts them. The second channel is behavioral. The specific habitual behavioral patterns that arise automatically in familiar situations without deliberate conscious choice are expressions of subconscious programs rather than of conscious preference. The third channel is physiological. The specific hormonal and neurochemical environments of the body, which profoundly influence mood, cognitive function, and immune response, are shaped continuously by the emotional states generated by subconscious programs running in the background of daily experience. The specific content of the subconscious programs, most consequentially governing the quality of adult life, can be identified with reasonable precision by examining the recurring patterns of that adult life with honest attention, rather than with the defensive interpretation that prefers to attribute those patterns to external causes. The pattern of the financial life, across different strategies and different periods, reveals the financial program. The pattern of the relational life, across different partners in different contexts, reveals the relational and worthiness programs. The pattern of what kinds of professional recognition reliably arrive and what kinds reliably do not reveals the self-concept program. These patterns are not accidents or coincidences. They are the faithful outputs of specific programs, running with the reliability of any consistently executed code. Revising subconscious programs is not accomplished through conscious deliberation, intellectual argument, or the kind of willpower-based effort that operates through the conscious mind while leaving the subconscious programs entirely unchanged. The subconscious responds to the same mechanism through which it was originally programmed: consistent, emotionally charged, sensorially rich experience delivered during states of heightened receptivity. The states of highest natural subconscious receptivity in adult life are the transitions between sleep and waking, when the brainwave state passes through the theta range that was dominant throughout the developmental programming period. These transitions are the highest leverage windows available in any daily routine for the deliberate introduction of new subconscious content to replace the old limiting programs. The emotional dimension of effective subconscious reprogramming is the most consistently underemphasized element in popular presentations of the concept. The subconscious does not respond to the semantic content of words or the visual detail of mental images as primary signals. It responds to genuine emotional intensity as the primary signal of importance. Content delivered with genuine emotional engagement, with a real felt quality in the body rather than a detached cognitive performance, registers in the subconscious as genuinely significant experience deserving of genuine encoding. The same content delivered without genuine emotional engagement registers as background noise. This means that the quality of the felt experience accompanying any reprogramming practice is considerably more consequential than the duration of the practice, the frequency of the repetition, or the specific verbal or visual content chosen. The full architecture of the subconscious, examined honestly and worked with skillfully, is the specific terrain through which every genuine life transformation must pass. There is no lasting outer change that doesn't eventually require corresponding inner change at the subconscious level, because the subconscious is the system that continuously generates the outer experience through its perceptual, behavioral, and physiological operations. The understanding of how the subconscious works is therefore not a supplementary addition to whatever other approach a person takes to improving their life. It is the foundational understanding from which every other approach derives its genuine effectiveness or reveals its genuine limitation. Chapter 4. Perception is not reality. It is the filter through which reality arrives. The assumption most people operate from, below the level of deliberate examination, is that perception is the passive reception of an objective, fixed external reality that exists independently of the perceiver and appears to the perceiver essentially as it is. This assumption feels so obviously correct that questioning it seems almost perverse. Of course, the world is what it is. Of course, you are simply seeing what is there. Of course, your perception is a straightforward record of external facts rather than a construction shaped by what you bring to the encounter. This assumption, held with the comfortable solidity of something never examined, because it is too obvious to examine, is precisely the assumption that keeps most people's experienced reality organized around the same patterns, regardless of what genuinely changes in their external circumstances, because the assumption is false. Perception is not the passive reception of a fixed external reality. It is the specific, active, continuously shaped construction of an experienced world from the available raw material of sensation, and the shaping is done primarily by what the perceiver brings to the act of perception. The neuroscientific account of perception confirms this with considerable precision. The brain does not receive sensory information and then neutrally report it to consciousness. The brain receives sensory signals and uses them primarily to update and correct its existing predictive models of what is out there, rather than to construct fresh perceptual experience from scratch on each occasion. This predictive processing account, developed most extensively by neuroscientist Carl Friston, building on earlier work by Hermann von Helmholtz, proposes that the brain is fundamentally a prediction machine, continuously generating its best model of what the world contains and what is about to happen, and using incoming sensory signals primarily to test and refine that model, rather than as the primary raw material from which perception is built. What reaches conscious awareness as experience is therefore always already the brain's best prediction of what is there, shaped by the accumulated history of what has been there before. The specific predictions the brain generates are shaped primarily by the content of the subconscious programs described in the previous chapter. The person whose subconscious carries a program of genuine financial scarcity is generating predictions of financial scarcity in each new financial situation they encounter, and those predictions shape what they notice, what they interpret, and what they conclude about the financial environment with a consistent bias towards scarcity, confirming evidence. The person whose subconscious carries a program of genuine relational distrust is generating predictions of untrustworthiness in each new relational encounter. And those predictions shape the entire texture of how they read other people's intentions, words, and behaviors. These predictions are not consciously chosen. They arise automatically from the subconscious operating system, shaping perception below the level of deliberate awareness. The reticular activating system, the neural filter that determines what fraction of available information reaches conscious awareness, is calibrated by the dominant concerns, dominant beliefs, and dominant expectations of the current inner state. It is the specific mechanism through which the subconscious prediction machine influences what is consciously perceived as available in the environment. When the dominant expectation is financial difficulty, the reticular activating system is calibrated to deliver financial difficulty evidence to conscious awareness while filtering financial opportunity evidence before it reaches deliberate attention. When the dominant expectation is genuine opportunity, the calibration reverses, and the same environment appears to contain considerably more evidence of genuine opportunity than the scarcity expecting person inhabiting the same environment would consciously register. The environment has not changed. The perceptual filter through which it is experienced has changed. The practical consequence of understanding that perception is filtered rather than objective is the specific realization that changing what is experienced does not require first changing what exists in the external environment. It requires changing the filter through which the external environment is experienced. This is the specific mechanism through which the Hermetic principle of correspondence operates in the domain of daily experience. The inner world and the outer world correspond because the inner world is shaping the specific features of the outer world that reach conscious awareness, making the experienced outer world a consistent reflection of the inner world's dominant programs, even when the actual external environment contains considerably more variety than the filtered experience suggests. The concept of confirmation bias in cognitive psychology describes the specific tendency to notice, remember, and interpret information in ways that confirm existing beliefs, while filtering, forgetting, and explaining away information that contradicts them. Research on confirmation bias is among the most extensively replicated in the entire history of experimental psychology, appearing consistently across cultures, across domains, and across every demographic studied. The significance of this research for the practical purposes of this audiobook is that it provides the most mainstream, extensively documented scientific account of the same mechanism that the Hermetic principle of correspondence and the practical teachings of consciousness and reality creation have been describing from a different angle. That the inner world consistently shapes the experienced outer world through the filter of what is noticed, remembered, and interpreted. Working deliberately with the understanding that perception is filtered is the specific practice of learning to notice the filter, rather than simply accepting the filtered experience as objective reality. The moment of noticing, when a person catches themselves interpreting an ambiguous situation through the specific lens of an old limiting belief, rather than evaluating it freshly on its own terms, is the specific moment when genuine freedom becomes available. Not the freedom from having the old filter, which cannot be instantly removed simply by recognizing it, but the freedom to evaluate what the filter is delivering with a quality of genuine curiosity, rather than of automatic belief in its accuracy. This freedom, small in any individual moment and enormously consequential accumulated across thousands of moments, is the specific beginning of the genuine shift in perception that eventually changes the experienced reality. The complete liberation of perception from the domination of limiting subconscious programs is not achieved in a single breakthrough moment. It is accomplished through the patient accumulation of genuinely different inner experience, delivered through the specific practices of subconscious reprogramming, visualization, affirmation, and intentional living described across the subsequent chapters of this audiobook. Each genuine new inner experience, received with genuine emotional presence, gradually updates the predictive model from which perception is generated. Each update, small in isolation and significant in accumulation, moves the perceptual filter incrementally toward the quality of experience genuinely desired. And the perceptual filter that eventually reaches genuine alignment with the desired reality generates a genuinely different experience of the same world, which then generates genuinely different behavioral responses, which then generate genuinely different outer outcomes, completing the loop from inner change to outer transformation. Chapter 5: Vibration, Frequency, and the Electromagnetic Human. You are an electromagnetic being. This is not a metaphor or a spiritual assertion requiring faith. It is a straightforward description of established biophysics. Every nerve impulse in your body is an electrical event, producing a corresponding magnetic field. Your heart, the most electrically active organ in the body, generates an electromagnetic field that extends several feet beyond your physical body in all directions, a field sufficiently strong to be measured by instruments placed outside the body. Every cell in your body is enclosed in a membrane that maintains an electrical potential and communicates with adjacent cells through electrochemical signaling. The human body is, at the level of its most basic biological operations, an electromagnetic system continuously broadcasting specific patterns of electromagnetic information into the surrounding environment, and receiving and responding to the electromagnetic broadcasts of other people and other systems in its environment. The HeartMath Institute in California has conducted the most extensive and the most practically significant body of research on the human heart's electromagnetic field and its relationship to inner state, interpersonal connection, and physiological function. Their research has established that the heart's electromagnetic field changes measurably in pattern and in coherence in response to different emotional states. States of genuine appreciation, genuine care, and genuine compassion produce coherent, rhythmically organized electromagnetic patterns in the heart's field. States of anxiety, frustration, and chronic negative emotional experience produce incoherent, erratic electromagnetic patterns in the same field. The coherent patterns are associated with measurably improved immune function, measurably improved cognitive performance, measurably improved emotional regulation, and a specific quality of interpersonal presence that other people's nervous systems detect and respond to below the threshold of conscious awareness. The Hermetic principle of vibration, described in the previous chapter on the 7 principles, finds its most concrete and most scientifically grounded expression in these electromagnetic research findings. The principle states that everything vibrates at specific rates, and that different rates of vibration correspond to different qualities of experience. The specific emotional states that different people habitually inhabit correspond to different rates and patterns of the heart's electromagnetic vibration. And the different rates and patterns produce genuinely different qualities of interpersonal and circumstantial experience through the specific mechanism of what other people's nervous systems receive from the electromagnetic broadcast and how they respond to it. The person in a state of genuine coherence, broadcasting the organized, coherent electromagnetic pattern of genuine care and genuine appreciation, is received differently by every person they encounter than the person broadcasting the incoherent pattern of chronic anxiety and chronic resentment. The research findings on heart rate variability, the specific measure of variation in the timing between heartbeats that is among the most sensitive available indicators of overall physiological coherence, provide the specific bridge between the emotional dimension of human experience and the electromagnetic dimension. High heart rate variability, characterized by smooth organized oscillation of the heart's rhythm, is associated with the positive emotional states described above and with optimal function across biological, cognitive, and emotional domains. Low heart rate variability, characterized by erratic, disorganized oscillation, is associated with chronic stress, chronic negative emotional states, and suppressed function across the same domains. The emotional state is not simply an inner experience without outer consequence. It is the specific generator of the electromagnetic broadcast that shapes the quality of every outer encounter, and that produces the specific physiological conditions from which the quality of physical health, cognitive performance, and creative capacity emerge. The practical implication of understanding the human being as an electromagnetic system is the specific realization that cultivating high-quality inner states is not simply a matter of personal well-being without external consequence. The quality of the inner state produces the quality of the electromagnetic broadcast, and the quality of the electromagnetic broadcast shapes the quality of every interpersonal encounter, every professional interaction, every creative endeavor, and every experience of opportunity or its absence that the person has in a day, a week, a year, and a life. The person who genuinely understands this does not cultivate genuine appreciation and genuine compassion as virtuous additions to an otherwise pragmatic life. They cultivate them as the specific inner conditions from which the most effective, most creative, most genuinely abundant outer life most naturally emerges. The specific practice of deliberately cultivating heart coherence, developed and extensively documented by the Heart Math Institute, involves a specific combination of breath pattern and focused inner attention. The practice begins with slowing and deepening the breath to approximately 5 to 6 breath cycles per minute. breathing primarily from the belly rather than from the chest. During this slowed breathing, the attention is directed deliberately toward the heart area of the chest. And from within that heart-focused attention, a genuine positive emotional state is actively cultivated, beginning with something small and genuinely appreciable in the current experience rather than attempting to manufacture dramatic positive feeling disconnected from genuine engagement. Even a brief, genuine quality of appreciation for something specifically real in the current moment begins to shift the heart's electromagnetic pattern toward coherence within minutes of the beginning of the practice. The accumulation of regular coherence practice across weeks and months produces a measurable shift in the baseline electromagnetic quality of the person's ongoing inner state, what the heart math researchers describe as a shift in the autonomic nervous system's set point toward greater parasympathetic dominance and greater physiological coherence as the resting default rather than as an achieved state requiring continuous active effort. This baseline shift has consequences for every dimension of the person's quality of life, from the quality of their immune function and physical health, through the quality of their cognitive performance and creative access, through the quality of their interpersonal presence and the specific quality of opportunity and connection that presence generates in the people they encounter. The electromagnetic human, understood in its genuine biophysical reality, is transformed through the cultivation of genuine inner coherence into something considerably more creative and considerably more genuinely powerful than the person who has not understood what they actually are. The broader principle that vibration shapes experience, applied beyond the specific domain of electromagnetic measurement into the wider domain of how the quality of the inner life shapes the quality of the outer experience through every available mechanism simultaneously, is the specific understanding from which every other teaching in this audiobook draws its practical significance. The specific quality of vibration, of inner state, of emotional frequency that you most habitually inhabit is the specific quality of the signal you broadcast into every encounter and every circumstance you engage with. And the quality of the broadcast is the primary determinant of the quality of the response across every domain of the outer life that your inner life continuously generates. Chapter 6. The self-concept. The most powerful program. There is a program running in your subconscious that is more consequential than any other program in its influence on the overall quality of your life, and that is the self-concept. The self-concept is not a simple belief or a simple expectation in a single domain. It is the foundational program from which every other belief, every other expectation, and every other subconscious pattern in every domain derives its coherence and its consistency. The self-concept is the specific sense of who you fundamentally are. What level and quality of life is therefore appropriate and natural for someone of your particular identity, and what the world can be genuinely expected to offer someone like you. Every specific belief about money, about relationships, about health, about professional recognition, about creative capacity, and about belonging derives its ceiling and its floor from the specifications of the foundational self-concept. Nathaniel Branden's decades of research and clinical work on the psychology of self-esteem, compiled across several influential books, beginning with The Psychology of Self-Esteem, established the specific relationship between the quality of the self-concept and the quality of the life lived from it. with unusual precision. His work demonstrated that self-esteem, properly understood not as narcissistic self-regard, but as the genuine conviction of one's own worthiness and one's own competence, is the single most powerful predictor of psychological health and life effectiveness across every domain studied. The person with genuine, stable, grounded self-esteem approaches financial opportunity with a specific quality of genuine confidence that generates different results than the same financial acumen applied from chronic self-doubt. The person with genuine self-esteem approaches relational vulnerability with a specific quality of genuine openness that generates different relational experiences than the same desire for connection approached from chronic inadequacy. The self-concept was assembled during the developmental period through precisely the mechanism described in the chapter on the subconscious from the specific accumulated messages of the early environment about what kind of person this particular child was. These messages were communicated both explicitly through the specific verbal assessments of caregivers, teachers, and peer groups, and implicitly through the specific quality of attention, interest, care, and genuine delight that the early environment extended toward the child. The child who received consistent, genuine interest in their specific inner world, consistent, genuine care for their specific experience, and consistent, genuine delight in their specific presence, assembled a self-concept of genuine worthiness and genuine belonging that then became the foundational program from which the adult's entire life experience would be generated. The child who received something different assembled something different with equally consistent and equally consequential effects. The specific way the self-concept governs daily experience is through the mechanism of the upper limiting problem, described with particular clarity and practical insight by Gay Hendricks in his book, The Big Leap. The upper limiting problem is the specific, largely unconscious tendency to limit the amount of genuine good in any domain to the level that corresponds to what the foundational self-concept specifies as appropriate for someone of this identity. When external circumstances bring the level of genuine good above this specified level, the subconscious self-concept generates the specific impulses, thoughts, and behaviors that restore the level of good to the familiar range. This is the specific mechanism behind the patterns that so many people recognize in their own lives. The professional breakthrough followed by the inexplicable mistake. The period of genuine relational warmth followed by the inexplicable argument. The financial improvement followed by the inexplicable expense. The upper limit of the self-concept is being maintained with the same faithful reliability as a thermostat maintains its set temperature. Revising the self-concept requires the specific combination of genuine cognitive recognition of the current self-concept's content and limitations, genuine emotional work with the specific experiences that installed the limiting content, and the consistent, dedicated practice of installing new self-concept programming through the specific methods described in this and subsequent chapters. The cognitive recognition without the emotional work produces intellectual understanding that changes nothing at the level of the lived experience. The emotional work without the consistent programming practice produces catharsis that may bring relief, but may not produce lasting revision of the foundational program. And the programming practice, without both the cognitive recognition and the emotional work, produces mechanical repetition of positive content that the subconscious resists. because it lacks the specific foundation of genuine insight and genuine emotional metabolization that allows new programming to genuinely replace old programming rather than simply existing alongside it. The specific content most effective for self-concept revision combines the identity-level affirmation work described in a later chapter with the very specific inner practice of inhabiting, with genuine felt quality, the experience of being the kind of person who genuinely deserves and naturally inhabits the desired quality of life. Not the experience of acquiring specific desired outcomes while remaining the current self-concept. The experience of being the person for whom the desired quality of life is simply the natural, appropriate, obvious way that life works for someone of this identity. This subtle but crucial distinction between imagining desired outcomes and genuinely inhabiting a different identity from which those outcomes naturally emerge is the specific distinction that determines whether visualization and affirmation work produces genuine self-concept revision or simply pleasant experiences without lasting inner change. The person who has done genuine work on the foundational self-concept experiences a specific quality of life change that is distinct from and more comprehensive than the change produced by addressing specific domain beliefs or specific domain behaviors. Domain-level change is real and genuinely valuable, but it is limited by the ceiling of the foundational self-concept, which will continuously generate the upper limiting response whenever any domain improves beyond its specifications. Foundational self-concept revision removes the ceiling from every domain simultaneously, because every domain's ceiling was derived from the same foundational specification. The person whose foundational self-concept has genuinely shifted toward genuine worthiness and genuine belonging at the level of the desired quality of life finds that multiple domains begin to improve simultaneously, without the upper limiting sabotage that previously prevented any single domain from sustaining improvement above the old self-concept's ceiling. The most direct available indicator of genuine self-concept revision is the specific change in what feels natural and what feels foreign as the inner work accumulates. The person whose self-concept has been installed with genuine unworthiness at a certain level of success finds that level of success uncomfortable, threatening, somehow not quite right for someone like them, even when it has been consciously desired and genuinely pursued. The person whose self-concept is being genuinely revised toward genuine worthiness at that level begins to find it progressively more natural, more obviously appropriate, more simply right, in the specific sense of feeling genuinely at home, rather than somehow imposterous in the desired circumstances. This shift in the felt quality of naturalness is the most honest and most direct available signal that the foundational program is genuinely changing. Chapter 7. Visualization, the rehearsal that rewires the brain, the capacity for genuine mental imagery, the ability to construct and sustain vivid, sensorially rich, emotionally engaged inner pictures of experiences not currently occurring in the external environment, is one of the most distinctive and most consequential capacities of human consciousness. Every architectural structure that has ever been built, every musical composition that has ever been written, every scientific theory that has ever been developed, every social movement that has ever organized itself toward a new form of collective life, began as an image in someone's mind. This sequence from inner picture to outer reality, is so consistent and so universal across human creative endeavor that it hardly registers as remarkable in the domains of explicit creative work. What most people have never been taught is that the same sequence governs the domains of personal life as thoroughly as it governs the domains of art, science, architecture, and social transformation. The neuroscientific research on mental imagery and its effects on the brain has produced findings that both explain why visualization is effective and clarify the specific conditions under which it is most effective. The most foundational finding is that the same neural circuits that are activated during genuine sensory experience are substantially activated during vivid mental imagery of the same experience. When you vividly imagine the experience of running, the motor cortex areas governing leg movement show measurable activation. When you vividly imagine the experience of listening to music, the auditory cortex shows measurable activation. When you vividly imagine the experience of a particular emotional state, the emotional processing centers of the limbic system show measurable activation. The brain, from the perspective of its own internal activity, does not sharply distinguish between a vividly imagined experience and a genuinely occurring one. The research on motor imagery and athletic performance, which has accumulated across several decades and across multiple sports and skill domains, provides some of the most extensively documented evidence that mental imagery genuinely changes physical capability rather than simply improving the psychological state of the person practicing it. Studies consistently find that groups practicing mental imagery of specific athletic skills show measurable improvement in the actual physical performance of those skills, with improvements often approaching, though not quite equaling, the improvements produced by equivalent time in actual physical practice. The mechanism is the strengthening of the neural pathways governing the skill through the repeated activation during mental practice, in exactly the same way that actual physical practice strengthens those pathways through repeated activation during genuine physical execution. The specific quality of mental imagery that produces genuine neural change, as opposed to the kind of passive, detached mental drifting that most people mean when they say they can visualize something, involves three specific elements. The first element is vividness. The imagery should be as sensorially rich as can be genuinely accessed, involving not just visual content, but the specific sounds, physical sensations, smells, and emotional qualities that would characterize the experience being imagined. The second element is the inside perspective. The imagery should be inhabited from the first-person perspective of someone genuinely within the imagined experience, rather than observed from the third-person perspective of someone watching themselves have the experience. The inside perspective produces substantially more neural activation and substantially more emotional engagement than the outside perspective, and therefore produces substantially more genuine neural change through the practice. The third element is genuine emotional engagement. The imagined experience should be accompanied by the genuine felt quality of the emotional states that would characterize the desired experience as genuine current reality. The technique Neville Goddard called the state akin to sleep provides the specific physical condition that maximizes the effectiveness of visualization practice. This state, achieved by allowing the body to reach the deep physical relaxation and drowsiness of the boundary between waking and sleep without crossing fully into sleep corresponds to the theta brainwave state, described in the chapter on the subconscious, as the state of maximum receptivity for subconscious programming. Visualization practice conducted specifically during this state reaches the subconscious with the directness and the depth of the original developmental programming, because the brainwave condition is the same. The visualization content introduced in this state is processed by the subconscious as genuine experience rather than as deliberate mental exercise, and it produces genuine neural and subconscious programming change rather than the more modest effects of the same content introduced during ordinary waking consciousness. The specific scene most effective for visualization practice is chosen with a particular principle in mind. The scene should be one that implies the desired outcome has already occurred, rather than one that depicts the desired outcome in the process of occurring. The distinction is subtle but consequential. A scene of receiving genuine recognition for work that genuinely matters. From the inside perspective of someone experiencing that recognition as the natural current circumstance of their life, implies a completed achievement and installs the subconscious program of already having. A scene of the achievement in the process of happening implies an ongoing process and installs the subconscious program of about to have. The installed program shapes the perceptual, behavioral, and electromagnetic systems of the person accordingly, which means the about to have program generates a genuinely different quality of daily experience than the already have program, despite the similar surface content of the two visualizations. The consistency of visualization practice is more consequential than the duration of any single session, for the same reason that any form of genuine training produces its effects through the accumulation of consistent practice rather than through occasional heroic effort. A brief but genuine, emotionally engaged, inside perspective visualization session conducted daily across several weeks produces considerably more genuine neural change than a single extended visualization session of several hours, conducted once and then abandoned. The brain changes through the mechanism of repeated activation, strengthening specific neural pathways. The pathway that has been repeatedly activated through consistent brief practice is more thoroughly changed than the pathway that has been intensely activated on one occasion, without the subsequent repetition through which the initial change could consolidate into lasting structural modification. The person who has developed genuine visualization skill through patient, consistent practice across weeks and months eventually notices specific shifts in the quality of what arises spontaneously in their inner experience that indicate genuine neural change has occurred. The spontaneous arising of the inner picture that was previously constructed only through deliberate effort is one such indicator. The spontaneous arising of the emotional quality of the desired experience in the presence of relevant outer situations is another. And the specific shift in what the person finds themselves automatically doing, automatically pursuing, and automatically treating as natural and appropriate in relevant domains is the most external and most visible indicator of the genuine neural change that the visualization practice has produced at the level where lasting outer change originates. Chapter 8. The Practice of Intentional Living. Intentional living is not a motivational concept or a productivity framework. It is the specific practice of bringing deliberate, conscious engagement to the quality of the inner life across the full texture of ordinary daily experience, rather than reserving deliberate inner work for dedicated practice sessions, while allowing the remainder of daily experience to proceed through the habitual, unexamined autopilot of established subconscious programs. The gap between the person who maintains a dedicated morning meditation practice while living the rest of the day from unexamined reactive habit, and the person who has developed the specific capacity for genuine inner awareness across the ordinary moments of the entire day, is the gap between a person with a good inner practice and a person whose inner development has become genuinely integrated into their lived experience. This integration is what intentional living means, and it is what produces the most comprehensive and the most lasting transformation available through the work this audiobook describes. The foundational skill of intentional living is the specific capacity for what contemplative traditions across cultures have called witnessing awareness, and what contemporary psychological research on metacognition calls the ability to observe one's own mental processes as they occur. This capacity involves a specific quality of inner doubleness, a way of simultaneously being fully present in an experience while also maintaining the specific awareness of the inner state being inhabited, the quality of the thought being thought, the emotional frequency being generated, and the subconscious program being expressed through the automatic interpretation and automatic behavioral response. This doubleness is not a form of detachment or of distance from genuine experience. It is a specific expansion of awareness to include itself in its field of attention, without contracting the field of attention in order to do so. Developing witnessing awareness is the specific function of formal contemplative practice, and it is the reason that daily meditation, or its functional equivalent, any practice that consistently trains the capacity to observe inner experience from a position slightly removed from complete immersion in it, is the most foundational investment available in any comprehensive inner development program. The person who has developed genuine witnessing awareness through consistent formal practice and has learned to sustain it partially across the transition into ordinary activity has access to a quality of inner freedom that the person operating entirely from unconscious, unwitnessed autopilot does not have. The genuine freedom to notice that a habitual automatic response is arising and to choose whether to express it or to redirect it before it has become the behavior that generates the corresponding outer experience. The practice of conscious speech, described in the chapter on words in the previous audiobook, and applicable here as a dimension of intentional living, is the specific application of witnessing awareness to the specific domain of habitual language. The person practicing intentional living brings the same genuine awareness to the specific words arising habitually in internal monologue and in external conversation that they bring to any other dimension of inner experience, noticing the specific quality of the programming being delivered through the habitual language patterns and making the deliberate choice again and again across thousands of small, ordinary moments to replace limiting language with generative language. This is not the performance of positivity. It is the specific practice of genuine inner awareness applied to the specific dimension of language as the most continuously available programming tool in the daily life. The practice of conscious emotional regulation, as developed by the HeartMath Institute
and as described in the chapter on vibration and frequency, is another specific dimension of intentional living that produces the most comprehensive benefits when it is integrated into ordinary daily experience rather than maintained only during dedicated practice sessions.
The person who has learned the specific technique of heart-focused breathing and deliberate positive emotional state activation can deploy this practice in the specific moments of ordinary daily experience when the emotional state has drifted towards the incoherent, stress-activated patterns that undermine both inner well-being and the quality of the outer experience generated from the incoherent state. The brief, genuine deployment of coherence-restoring practice in the actual moments of the actual day when it is most needed is considerably more practically valuable than the same practice maintained only during formal practice sessions that are temporarily remote from the moments where genuine emotional challenge arises. The relationship dimension of intentional living involves the specific practice of bringing genuine, deliberate awareness to the quality of inner state brought to each significant interpersonal encounter. The person practicing intentional living notices, before entering a significant conversation or interaction, what the current quality of their inner electromagnetic broadcast is, and makes the deliberate choice, when possible, to shift toward a more coherent, more genuinely open, more genuinely interested inner state before proceeding with the interaction. This is not social performance or emotional inauthenticity. It is the specific recognition that the quality of the inner state brought to any interaction is one of the primary determinants of the quality of the interaction's outcome, and that deliberately preparing the inner state before significant interactions is one of the most practically effective investments available in any relational life. The financial dimension of intentional living involves the specific practice of noticing the emotional quality activated by financial situations and financial decisions, and bringing genuine awareness to the specific subconscious programs being expressed through automatic financial reactions and automatic financial behaviors. The person practicing intentional living in the financial domain notices the specific quality of anxiety, resentment, or contraction that arises automatically in the presence of financial stress. And instead of simply expressing that automatic quality through the reactive financial decisions it generates, they pause, notice the quality, recognize it as program expression rather than accurate situational assessment, and deliberate more genuinely from a slightly more stable inner position. This pause, however brief, is the specific point at which the subconscious financial program loses a small amount of its automatic dominance, and the person's genuine intelligence and genuine judgment gain a correspondingly small amount of genuine influence over the financial outcome. The integration of intentional living into the complete daily experience is the advanced stage of the inner development work that all the preceding chapters have been building toward. The formal practices of visualization, affirmation, heart coherence cultivation, and subconscious reprogramming are the specific investments that build the inner capacities required for intentional living. The intentional living itself is what deploys those capacities in the actual terrain of actual daily experience, converting the inner capacities from qualities possessed in a practice context into qualities expressed across the full breadth of a genuinely lived life. This conversion is the specific transformation from a person who has an inner practice to a person who is living from genuine inner development, and it is the most comprehensive and the most lasting quality of change that the complete work of this audiobook is designed to produce. Chapter 9. Abundance Consciousness, Opening to the Flow. The universe in which you exist is not structured around scarcity as its primary organizing principle. This is a claim that requires careful examination rather than either immediate acceptance or immediate dismissal, because the daily experience of most people in most economic situations appears to provide abundant evidence for scarcity as a fundamental feature of reality. There is never quite enough time. There is never quite enough money. There is never quite enough recognition. Never quite enough genuine connection. Never quite enough of whatever the particular hunger most urgently requires. This appearance, however, is the output of a specific perceptual filter, the scarcity consciousness, described in the earlier chapters, rather than a faithful report of an objective, fixed scarcity in the actual structure of available reality. And the distinction between what the filter delivers and what is actually available to a genuinely differently calibrated consciousness is the specific distinction this chapter examines. The concept of abundance consciousness, used throughout the prosperity teachings that form part of this audiobook's tradition, is not primarily a positive attitude about money. It is a specific quality of subconscious program that treats genuine sufficiency, genuine flow, and genuine availability of genuine good as the natural, expected, normal state of reality, rather than as the exceptional state that must be achieved through extraordinary effort and carefully guarded once achieved. The person inhabiting genuine abundance consciousness does not experience financial ease as something wonderful and unusual. They experience it as the natural background of their financial life. The way that someone with secure attachment experiences relational warmth as the natural background of their relational life, rather than as an exceptional achievement requiring constant vigilance to protect. Florence Scovel. Shin's description of the law of supply states that the universe contains inexhaustible supply, available to anyone genuinely aligned with abundance consciousness, and that the experience of lack is always a consciousness experience rather than a fixed feature of available material reality. This principle, understood in its most specific and most practical sense, rather than as a vague assertion that the universe will provide if you believe hard enough, means that what is available to any particular person is shaped by the specific quality of their subconscious programming around abundance and worthiness. And that genuine revision of this programming genuinely expands what is practically available, rather than simply improving the person's attitude toward an unchanged set of practical constraints. The specific mechanisms through which abundance consciousness generates more abundant outer experience are the same mechanisms described throughout this audiobook. Perceptual filtering that delivers more opportunity, evidence, and more possibility evidence to conscious awareness, behavioral generation, that produces more genuinely confident, more genuinely open, more genuinely creative, financial, and professional behavior, and electromagnetic broadcasting that communicates the specific quality of genuine sufficiency and genuine confidence that other people's nervous systems respond to with greater openness, greater generosity, and greater willingness to extend genuine opportunity. None of these mechanisms requires cosmic intervention or miraculous provision. All of them operate through the ordinary psychological and physiological processes that govern every human life. They simply produce genuinely different outputs when the underlying inner programming is genuinely abundance-oriented rather than genuinely scarcity-oriented. The practice of genuine gratitude, applied specifically to the financial and material dimension of life with genuine specificity rather than with vague assertions of thankfulness, is the single most immediately accessible practice available for beginning to shift the subconscious program from scarcity orientation toward abundance orientation. Genuine gratitude requires the specific, deliberate noticing and genuine appreciating of genuine good that is currently present in the material and financial dimension of life, not the minimum that remains above the floor of absolute deprivation, but the specific, genuine good that is genuinely and specifically available right now. The specific meal that is genuinely nutritious. The specific shelter that is genuinely protecting. The specific physical comfort that the current material situation genuinely provides. Finding these with genuine specificity and holding them with genuine felt appreciation recalibrates the perceptual filter toward abundance evidence with immediate, genuine effect. The practice of generous giving from the specific inner state of genuine sufficiency, rather than from obligation or from the specific calculation of investment and expected return, is among the most consistently described and most consistently transformative practices in every tradition of abundance teaching that has accumulated genuine wisdom rather than simply reassuring platitudes. The mechanism is the same mechanism through which all subconscious programming operates. The act of giving genuinely from genuine felt sufficiency provides the subconscious with direct, embodied, emotionally authentic evidence that there is genuinely enough to give from. This evidence, delivered with the specific authority of genuine, enacted experience, rather than of deliberate cognitive assertion, is exactly the kind of input that produces genuine subconscious program revision, rather than the superficial overlay of positive intention on unchanged underlying programming. The concept of circulation, which Shin and related teachers describe as the specific principle governing genuine financial abundance, states that money, like all forms of energy, is naturally in motion, and that its natural tendency is toward flow rather than toward stagnation. The person who allows genuine financial flow, giving freely in proportion to genuine current sufficiency, and receiving with genuine openness and genuine gratitude rather than with the anxious grasping that signals insufficiency, is aligned with the natural character of financial energy rather than working against it. The hoarding impulse, however understandable as a response to genuine scarcity experience, generates the specific subconscious program of scarcity as the accurate description of financial reality, which then filters for scarcity evidence and generates scarcity-consistent behavior, producing more of the scarcity that the hoarding was intended to protect against. Abundance consciousness, fully developed through the consistent application of the practices described in this and related chapters, produces a specific quality of life experience that people who have genuinely developed it consistently describe in similar terms, regardless of their specific cultural or spiritual background. There is a specific quality of ease in navigating what were previously experienced as genuinely difficult financial and material situations. There is a specific quality of genuine confidence in pursuing genuine opportunities that previously felt unavailable or not for someone like me. There is a specific quality of genuine openness to receiving good, including the specific financial good of genuine compensation for genuine contribution that was previously blocked by the specific worthiness programs installed alongside the scarcity programs during the developmental period. And there is a specific quality of genuine generosity that arises naturally from genuine sufficiency, generating the genuine circulation that abundance consciousness identifies as the specific condition through which genuine financial abundance is most naturally and most sustainably maintained. Chapter 10. Consciousness Expansion and Spiritual Awakening. There is a dimension of human experience that exceeds the ordinary, reactive, habit-organized consciousness of daily life, and that has been described with remarkable consistency across the most diverse range of human cultures, historical periods, and contemplative traditions. This dimension goes by different names in different contexts: enlightenment, awakening, self-realization, liberation, cosmic consciousness, the unitive experience, the oceanic feeling, peak experience. The vocabularies differ, the specific metaphysical frameworks within which the experience is interpreted differ, and the specific practices through which it is approached differ enormously across traditions. But the specific quality of the experience itself, as described by people who have genuinely encountered it across the entire range of human history and human culture, shows a consistency that cannot be adequately explained as cultural borrowing or as the influence of shared conceptual frameworks across isolated traditions. Abraham Maslow's research on peak experiences, conducted through interviews with a broad range of people who had spontaneously reported experiences of unusual quality and unusual significance across many different contexts, established the specific phenomenological features that these experiences share regardless of the context in which they occur. Maslow found consistent reports of a specific feeling of unity with the world or with all of existence, a specific sense that ordinary concerns about the personal self had become temporarily irrelevant, a specific quality of profound clarity and understanding that felt more real and more true than ordinary waking consciousness, a specific quality of deep peace and absolute security that did not depend on any external circumstance for its maintenance, and a specific sense of having encountered something of ultimate significance that could not be fully communicated to anyone who had not shared the experience. These features appear across the peak. Experience reports of atheists and theists alike, of the artistic and the scientific, of the contemplative and the active. The Hermetic tradition's principle of mentalism, understood in its most expansive form, suggests that consciousness is not simply a product of individual brains, but is in some fundamental sense the medium through which all reality is constituted. The experience of consciousness expansion, that peak experiences, genuine mystical states, and advanced contemplative practice consistently produce, is, in this understanding, an experience of the perceiver's ordinary contracted identification with the individual self, temporarily giving way to a more expansive identification with the larger consciousness of which individual consciousness is a specific local expression. This is the specific experience that every genuine tradition of spiritual development has been cultivating through its distinctive practices. And it is the specific experience that William James, the founder of American psychology, described as the root and center of religious experience across its many forms. The practical consequences of genuine consciousness expansion. 4. The practical concerns of daily life, including financial life, relational life, professional life, and health, are more specific and more immediate than the word spiritual might suggest to someone who has associated spirituality primarily with otherworldly concerns rather than with genuine practical effectiveness in this world. The person who has accessed genuine, expanded consciousness, even briefly and incompletely, through whatever means their particular practice provides, returns to ordinary life with a specific quality of perspective that is genuinely different from the perspective available within the contracted, reactive, habit-governed consciousness that preceded the expansion. Specifically, the problems that appeared absolute and defining from within the contracted perspective appear provisional and addressable from the expanded perspective. The possibilities that were invisible from within the contracted view become visible from the expanded one. Meditation, in its many forms across many traditions, is the most extensively developed and the most thoroughly documented method available for cultivating genuine, reproducible access to expanded states of consciousness. The research on meditation's physiological and psychological effects has accumulated across several decades and across many independent research groups to produce one of the most thoroughly documented sets of findings in contemporary behavioral and neuroscience. The findings consistently show measurable reduction in physiological stress markers, measurable improvement in immune function, measurable improvement in emotional regulation and emotional well-being, measurable improvement in cognitive performance and creative problem-solving, and measurable changes in brain structure and function in regions associated with self-awareness, emotional regulation, and integrated cognitive processing. The practice changes the biological instrument of consciousness in ways that genuinely expand what that instrument makes available. The specific feature of consciousness expansion, most practically relevant to the themes of this audiobook, is what might be called expanded possibility space, the specific experience of a wider range of options, a wider range of perspectives, and a wider range of creative approaches being genuinely available from within the expanded state than were available from within the contracted one. The business problem that appeared to have only two options from within ordinary reactive consciousness reveals 3 or 5 or 10 options from within the more expansive awareness of genuine inner stillness. The relational conflict that appeared to have only one meaning from within the defensive contracted state reveals multiple possible meanings from within the genuinely open, genuinely curious, expanded state. The creative project that appeared to have reached a genuine impasse from within the striving, analytical, outcome-attached ordinary state reveals unexpected directions from within the receptive, unhurried, genuinely interested, expanded state. Spiritual awakening, in the specific sense relevant to this audiobook, is not primarily the dramatic transformative experience of a single illuminating moment, though such experiences do occur and are genuinely significant when they do. It is more accurately described as the gradual, patient, consistently practiced expansion of the baseline quality of consciousness from the contracted, reactive, habit-governed quality of ordinary unexamined experience toward the more spacious, more genuinely aware, more freely creative quality of consciousness that consistent inner development produces across the full arc of a genuine practice life. This gradual expansion is what every genuine tradition of inner development has been cultivating through its specific practices, and it is what this audiobook's consistent application across a life genuinely devoted to inner development produces, not enlightenment as a sudden event, but awakening as a continuous, deepening, enriching process of becoming genuinely more aware of what you actually are. The specific experience most immediately available to any person who engages genuinely with the practices described across this audiobook is not the dramatic peak experience or the rare mystical state, but the specific quality of growing clarity, growing ease, growing creative access, and growing genuine peace that consistent, genuine inner development produces across months and years of genuine, consistent practice. This quality is not dramatic or spectacular. It is the specific, accumulating, deeply satisfying experience of becoming more genuinely yourself, more genuinely available to genuine experience, more genuinely capable of genuine contribution, and more genuinely connected to the genuine meaning that consciousness, fully developed, discovers as the background quality of all experience rather than as a rare and fragile achievement requiring constant external support. Chapter 11. Reality Creation, the Complete Inner Technology. The phrase reality creation, used throughout this audiobook and across the broader tradition of consciousness and manifestation teaching, is sometimes received with the discomfort of something that sounds presumptuous or delusional, as though claiming the capacity to create reality is claiming godlike power over a fixed, objective, external world. This is not what the phrase means, and clarifying what it does mean is the specific work of this chapter. Reality creation, understood precisely, describes the specific, genuine, consistently operating process through which the quality of a person's consciousness, their dominant beliefs, dominant expectations, dominant emotional frequencies, and dominant identity programs shapes the quality of their experienced reality through the specific mechanisms documented and described throughout this audiobook. This process is not optional. It is not achievable or avoidable through deliberate choice. It is simply what consciousness does, continuously, and regardless of whether the person understands it or directs it deliberately. The distinction between unconscious reality creation and deliberate reality creation is therefore not the distinction between whether reality creation is occurring, but the distinction between whether it is being directed toward what is genuinely desired or toward whatever the established unexamined subconscious programs have been specifying as the appropriate experience for someone of this particular identity. The person who has never encountered these ideas is creating their reality as surely and as continuously as the person who has spent years deliberately working with these principles. The difference is that the first person's reality is being created primarily from the unconscious programs installed during developmental experience without deliberate direction, while the second person's reality is being created from a combination of the same programs as they are progressively revised, and the genuinely chosen inner pictures, genuinely chosen beliefs, and genuinely chosen emotional states that the deliberate work introduces as new programming. The complete inner technology of deliberate reality creation, as described across the chapters of this audiobook, involves specific competencies in several simultaneous dimensions. The first is genuine self-knowledge. The specific, honest, non-defensive understanding of the current subconscious programs, beliefs, expectations, and self-concept specifications that are currently generating the current reality, obtained through the honest examination of the pattern evidence of the current and recent past, rather than through the wishful self-assessment of the conscious mind's preferred self-image. Without genuine self-knowledge at this level, the inner work is applied without genuine understanding of what it is working with, which is the specific condition that produces the pattern of people who practice positive thinking, while their actual subconscious programs continue generating the same old results underneath the surface of the positive thinking practice. The second competency is genuine skill in subconscious reprogramming. The specific capacity to introduce new content into the subconscious at the level and in the condition where it will genuinely be received as programming rather than as conscious intention overlaid on unchanged, deeper programming. This competency is developed through the consistent application of the practices described in the earlier chapters on subconscious architecture, visualization, affirmation, and the specific high receptivity windows of the daily routine. It requires the specific patience of understanding that genuine subconscious change is gradual, requires consistent repetition with genuine emotional engagement, and produces its most significant results across months and years, rather than across days and weeks. The third competency is genuine skill in emotional state management. The specific capacity to cultivate and maintain the specific emotional states that are most aligned with the desired reality across the ordinary hours of ordinary days, rather than only during dedicated practice sessions. This is the specific competency that connects the inner development work to the specific electromagnetic broadcast described in the vibration chapter, because the emotional state is the primary generator of the electromagnetic broadcast, and the electromagnetic broadcast is one of the primary mechanisms through which the inner world shapes the outer one through the interpersonal and circumstantial field. Emotional state management does not mean suppressing genuine emotion or performing emotions not genuinely felt. It means the genuine cultivation of the emotional states most aligned with the desired reality through the specific practices of heart coherence, genuine gratitude, and the consistent return to genuine inner alignment after the inevitable drifts that ordinary daily experience produces. The fourth competency is genuine skill in directed action from genuine inner alignment. The specific capacity to take the outer actions that the inner work reveals as genuinely called for from the specific inner quality of genuine inspiration and genuine clarity, rather than from the reactive urgency or the anxious striving that characterizes outer action taken from an unaligned inner state. This is not the absence of action or the subordination of practical engagement to passive inner waiting. It is the specific quality of outer engagement that arises from genuine inner coherence, characterized by clarity about direction, genuine confidence in capacity, genuine openness to unexpected pathways, and the specific efficiency and effectiveness that actions taken from genuine inner alignment consistently display, compared to the same level of effort applied from reactive, anxious, incoherent inner states. The fifth and most integrating competency is the specific quality of patient, genuine, ongoing commitment to the complete inner technology as a daily, life-integrated practice, rather than as an occasional special effort. Every genuine transformation of significance that has ever occurred through the deliberate application of these principles has occurred across the genuine time that genuine change at the subconscious level requires. Not as a result of a single inspired session or a single motivated month, but as the accumulated product of consistent daily practice across the years of a genuinely committed inner development life. The person who brings this genuine commitment to the complete inner technology described across this audiobook's 12 chapters has access to the most powerful available instrument for genuine, lasting, comprehensive life transformation. Their own fully developed, skillfully directed, genuinely informed consciousness. The reality that genuine inner development creates is not a utopian fantasy or a promised land that requires only sufficient positive thinking to materialize. It is the specific quality of lived experience that emerges when a human being has genuinely developed the specific inner capacities that their consciousness was designed to develop. Genuine clarity about what genuinely matters. Genuine competence at creating genuine value. Genuine connection to other genuine human beings. And genuine access to the creative depth of their own awareness. This reality is available to any person willing to do the genuine inner work required to develop it. The work is real, it is demanding, it takes genuine time, and it produces the only thing worth having in any life. The specific quality of genuine human experience that comes from being genuinely, fully, authentically alive, to the full breadth of what human consciousness is actually capable of. Chapter 12. Living from the Inside Out, the Fully Conscious Life. The fully conscious life is not a destination reached through sufficient inner development work and then maintained effortlessly from a permanent plateau of achieved enlightenment. It is a specific quality of ongoing, continuously renewed, daily practiced relationship with your own inner experience that produces, through its consistent application across the full span of an ordinary human life, the most genuine and the most comprehensive version of human flourishing available. The person living from the inside out has not transcended ordinary human experience or escaped the genuine challenges, genuine losses, genuine limitations, and genuine complexity that constitute the actual texture of any genuine human life. They have developed the specific inner capacities that allow them to engage with that full texture of genuine human experience from a position of genuine inner resource, genuine inner stability, and genuine inner creative access that makes the challenges genuinely navigable, the losses genuinely metabolizable, and the complexity genuinely interesting rather than simply overwhelming. The integrated daily practice of the fully conscious life has three primary dimensions, each of which corresponds to a specific cluster of the specific competencies and specific practices described across the preceding chapters. The first dimension is the foundational daily investment in formal inner practice, the specific periods of concentrated inner work in the morning and evening high receptivity windows that build and maintain the subconscious programming, the visualized inner pictures, the heart coherence, and the genuine self-concept that constitute the inner infrastructure of the conscious life. These periods are not optional extras added when time permits. They are the primary investment from which everything else in the day derives its quality, the way that physical training is the primary investment from which an athlete's performance in competition derives its quality. The second dimension is the quality of genuine inner awareness maintained across the active hours of the day. The specific, ongoing, compassionate, non-judgmental witnessing of the inner experience across the full span of ordinary daily activity that transforms the day from a series of largely unconscious, habitual reactions into the specific practice ground for the genuine integration of inner development into lived experience. This dimension does not require sitting in meditation during ordinary daily activity. It requires the specific capacity for the background witnessing awareness that notices what program is being expressed through a habitual reaction, what belief is being reinforced through a habitual language pattern, what emotional broadcast is being generated through a habitual inner state without interrupting the genuine engagement with whatever the activity of the moment genuinely requires. The third dimension is the quality of the specific choices made across the ordinary moments of ordinary daily experience. The specific word chosen instead of the habitual one, the specific inner state deliberately accessed. Before a significant interaction, the specific generous action taken from genuine sufficiency rather than deferred for more comfortable conditions. The specific inspired action pursued, despite the conventional logic that suggested waiting for more certainty. These specific choices are the outer expression of the inner development that the formal practice has been building, and they are the specific mechanism through which the inner development becomes visible in the outer life rather than remaining a quality of inner experience without outer consequence. Each specific choice made from genuine inner development rather than from habitual, unconscious program is one more iteration of the new program expressing itself through actual behavior. The relational dimension of the fully conscious life deserves specific attention because it is the dimension most immediately and most continuously impacted by the quality of inner development and the dimension in which the most significant practical consequences of genuine inner development are most immediately visible to the people around the developing person. The person living genuinely from the inside out brings a specific quality of genuine presence, genuine interest, genuine care, and genuine openness to their significant relationships that is felt by the people in those relationships as a qualitatively different experience of being with this person than they had before the genuine development occurred. This is not a performance of better relational behavior. It is the specific genuine quality of the electromagnetic broadcast, the genuine coherence of the heart field, and the genuine openness of the witnessing awareness that consistently engaged inner development produces. The financial dimension of the fully conscious life is equally specific and equally practically significant. The person who has genuinely revised their subconscious financial programming toward genuine abundance consciousness, who has developed genuine skill in accessing and maintaining the specific emotional states aligned with genuine financial ease, and who takes the specific outer actions that arise from genuine inner clarity and genuine inner confidence, rather than from reactive anxiety or chronic scarcity belief, inhabits a genuinely different financial life than the same person with the same external financial circumstances and the same raw intelligence and capability who has not done the inner work. The difference is not circumstantial or educational. It is the specific quality of the consciousness with which the same circumstances and the same capabilities are being engaged, which produces genuinely different results. through every mechanism described across this audiobook. The creative and professional dimension of the fully conscious life is where some of the most dramatic and most surprising practical consequences of genuine inner development become visible. The creative access available from within genuine, expanded consciousness, genuine heart coherence, and genuine inner alignment consistently exceeds the creative access available from within reactive, contracted, anxiety-organized, ordinary consciousness in ways that the people who have experienced both consistently describe as genuinely remarkable. Problems that appeared genuinely intractable from within the ordinary contracted state reveal unexpected solutions from within the expanded, coherent, genuinely open inner state of the developed consciousness. The creative insight that seemed utterly unavailable during hours of effortful striving arrives spontaneously during the quality of genuine receptive stillness. That genuine inner development produces as its characteristic inner weather. The most important thing that can be said at the close of this audiobook, and at the close of this chapter, describing what the fully conscious life actually looks like in practice, is something both humble and genuinely hopeful. The fully conscious life is not a special achievement available only to people with particular spiritual gifts, particular cultural backgrounds, or particular favorable circumstances. It is the specific quality of life available to any human being who brings genuine, patient, consistent commitment to the genuine development of their own consciousness across the ordinary span of a genuine human life. The principles are real. The mechanisms are genuine. The practices are accessible. And the specific quality of human experience that emerges from their consistent, skillful, patient application is, quite simply, the most fully alive, the most genuinely creative, the most authentically connected, and the most deeply satisfying quality of human experience that it is possible for a human being to inhabit. This is what this audiobook has been building toward. This is what your consciousness was always capable of generating. And this is what begins, always and only, right here in this moment, with the next genuine choice you make about the quality of attention you bring to your own inner life.